Somewhere right now, a woman in Florida is sitting on a houseplant worth more than her car. A man in rural Indonesia just paid off his family's debt with a single leaf. And a retired teacher in North Carolina turned her backyard into a business that now pulls in more than her old salary ever did. None of these people won the lottery. None of them inherited money. They grew something. Something small. Something most of us would walk right past without a second look. Here's the strange part. A few of the plants on this list might already be sitting in your home right now, and you had no idea what they were worth. By the end of this video, you're going to look at your own windowsill differently. Stick around, because number one on this list has sold for more money per leaf than actual gold per gram, and I promise you won't see it coming. Welcome back to the Plant Gardener's Guide, the channel where we dig into the soil, the science, and the stories behind everything that grows. If this is your first time here, hello, and welcome to the family. We talk plants, food, history, myth, psychology, and yes, sometimes money, because it turns out the plant world has more wealth hiding in it than most people ever imagine. And if you're one of our regulars, welcome back. You already know how this goes. Grab something warm to drink, get comfortable, because today's list is one of the wildest we've ever put together. Before we get into it, if you're new here, consider subscribing. We post videos just like this one that dig beneath the surface of the plant world, the parts nobody else talks about. And if you're already subscribed, tap that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow and helps more curious minds like yours find us. All right, let's get into the 21 plants that turned regular, everyday people into millionaires, and how some of them might be growing closer to you than you think. Number 1. The variegated Monstera. A man once sold a single houseplant cutting, one leaf and a bit of stem, for more money than most people spend on a used car. No pot included. He mailed it in a padded envelope. That's not a joke. That actually happened during the height of what growers now call the houseplant gold rush. A Monstera with the right splash of white running through its leaves, a genetic quirk called variegation, became one of the strangest investment stories of the last decade. People who'd never grown anything more complicated than a basil plant on a kitchen windowsill suddenly found themselves in bidding wars over cuttings, watching auction pages the way other people watch stock tickers. Here's what makes variegation so valuable. It's unstable. A plant might throw out one leaf that's half white, half green, and the next leaf comes back fully green again. Nobody can fully guarantee it, nobody can force it reliably, and that unpredictability is exactly what collectors chase. Scarcity plus obsession is a dangerous, wonderful combination, and during the pandemic, with everyone stuck at home staring at their four walls, that combination exploded. Every day, people started propagating cuttings in spare bedrooms and selling them online for thousands of dollars each. Some quit their jobs to do it full-time. A rare, well-marked cutting could outprice an entire month's rent, and for a while it seemed like the whole internet had turned its attention to one very leafy houseplant. The bubble has cooled somewhat since its peak, but variegated Monstera still regularly sell for hundreds to thousands of dollars per cutting today, and the story kicked off a wave of plant collecting that changed the houseplant industry permanently. Number 2. Rothschild's slipper orchid. Somewhere in the rainforests of Borneo, there is a flower so rare and so valuable that people have been arrested trying to smuggle it out in their luggage. The Rothschild slipper orchid grows in exactly one place on Earth, a small patch of Kinabalu Park in Malaysia, and nowhere else naturally. It takes up to 15 years just to flower for the first time. When it finally does, the bloom is strange and almost alien, pale green streaked with deep maroon veins, unlike anything else in the plant world. Because it's so rare, collectors have paid staggering sums, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, for a single legally propagated specimen. That price tag created an ugly shadow market too, poachers stripping wild populations nearly to extinction chasing that payday. But here's the part that actually connects to our theme today. A small number of licensed growers who mastered legal propagation, essentially cloning the plant properly in controlled nurseries, turned that scarcity into a legitimate, thriving business, supplying serious collectors without touching a single wild plant. One grower's greenhouse operation, built almost entirely around this one flower, now generates more revenue annually than most small businesses ever will. Number 3. Wild American ginseng. Picture this. An elderly man walks into the Appalachian woods with a small shovel and a plastic bag, the same way he has every autumn for 40 years. 3 hours later, he walks out with roots worth more, pound for pound, than silver. Wild American ginseng doesn't grow on farms in the way you'd expect. The good stuff, the kind buyers pay real money for, grows slowly and quietly under old-growth forest canopy, sometimes taking 20, 30, even 50 years to mature into a root worth serious cash. Overseas buyers, particularly in parts of Asia where ginseng holds deep cultural and medicinal significance, will pay thousands of dollars for a single old, wild-grown root with the right shape and age rings. This has created something close to a modern-day gold rush across Appalachia. Families have paid off mortgages in a single good foraging season. It's also created real tension, because that same value has driven poaching on private and protected land, turning ginseng hunting into a surprisingly high-stakes, sometimes dangerous pursuit. Some families have shifted toward licensed, sustainable forest farming instead, essentially planting ginseng seed under natural forest cover and waiting a decade or more for it to mature, trading a quick score for a slower, steadier legacy income that gets passed down through generations. Number 4. The agarwood tree. Here's a plant fact that sounds made up but isn't. There is a wood, made by a tree defending itself from infection, that sells for more money per ounce than gold. Agarwood comes from a tropical tree that, when wounded or infected by a specific mold, produces a thick, fragrant, dark resin as a defense response. That resin, once harvested and processed, becomes one of the most valuable raw materials on the planet, used in luxury perfumes, incense, and traditional medicine across the Middle East and Asia. The catch is you can't force it reliably. Healthy, uninfected trees are basically worthless for this purpose, so farmers had to figure out how to deliberately trigger that infection process to actually get paid. The families and small farmers who cracked that code, learning to inoculate trees and wait years for the resin to develop, went from subsistence-level income to genuine wealth almost overnight once buyers came calling. A single kilogram of the highest-grade agarwood oil has sold for tens of thousands of dollars. It's slow money, it takes patience most of us don't have, but for the farmers who stuck with it, it turned ordinary tree farming into something closer to alchemy. Quick pause before we keep going, because honestly, if you're not at least a little bit tempted to go check your own houseplants right now, I don't know what will convince you. If this video is doing its job, drop a comment and tell me which plant on this list has surprised you the most so far. I read these, and I love seeing what stands out to different people. And if you haven't already, now's a great time to hit subscribe and tap that like button. It tells the algorithm to show this video to more curious people just like you, and it genuinely helps this channel keep growing. Alright, back to the list, because it only gets wilder from here. Number 5. The saffron crocus. Ounce for ounce, this flower has outpriced silver for centuries, and it's harvested almost entirely by hand. Saffron comes from the delicate red threads inside a small purple crocus flower, and each flower only produces 3 of those threads. 3. That means it takes roughly 75,000 flowers, all picked by hand in the early morning before the sun wilts them, to produce just 1 pound of saffron. That labor intensity is exactly why it remains one of the most expensive spices in the world. In regions like Kashmir, Iran, and parts of Spain, small farming families have grown saffron for generations, and for many, it's the single crop that lifts an entire household out of poverty. A modest plot of land, carefully tended, can produce a harvest worth thousands of dollars, season after season, as long as the flowers keep blooming. It's not an overnight fortune the way a rare cutting sale might be, but it's steady, real, generational wealth built from a flower most people only ever encounter as a pinch of orange-yellow spice in a jar. Number 6. Silver vine. If you have a cat, you're about to become very interested in this next plant. Most people have heard of catnip. Fewer have heard of silver vine, a plant native to parts of Asia that produces an even stronger reaction in cats, including many cats that don't respond to catnip at all. As more cat owners discovered this, demand quietly exploded, and a handful of early growers who recognized the trend before it went mainstream built genuinely profitable specialty businesses almost by accident. What makes this story fun is how unglamorous it started. This wasn't some exotic jungle discovery, it was ordinary growers noticing cats going absolutely feral over a plant most people had never heard of, and turning that observation into dried silver vine products, sticks, powders, toys, sold online to an increasingly obsessed customer base. Some of these small operations now ship internationally and pull in 6 figures annually, built on the simple premise that cats, apparently, will make you rich if you just listen to them. Number 7. Rare aged bonsai. A tree that's been alive since before your great-grandparents were born just sold at auction for more money than most houses. Bonsai isn't a species, it's an art form, ancient trees deliberately shaped and miniaturized over decades, sometimes centuries, passed down through generations of dedicated cultivation. The oldest verified specimens in the world are hundreds of years old, tended continuously by one caretaker after another, and collectors treat them less like plants and more like living heirlooms. When a documented, centuries-old bonsai comes up for sale, and it rarely does, serious collectors will pay six figures without blinking. For families who inherited these trees, sometimes without fully understanding what they had, discovering the true value of Grandpa's strange little tree in the backyard has been a genuinely life-changing moment. One specimen, a juniper believed to be over 1,000 years old, is considered essentially priceless, insured for an amount most of us will never see in our lifetimes. Number 8. The vanilla orchid. Real vanilla, the kind that actually comes from a flower, briefly became more valuable than silver, and almost nobody outside the farming world noticed. Vanilla is one of the most labor-intensive crops on Earth. Each flower blooms for only a single day, and must be hand-pollinated within hours or it's lost for the season entirely. Most of the world's vanilla comes from smallholder farms in Madagascar, where families tend vines that take years to mature. Around 2017, a combination of cyclone damage and surging global demand sent vanilla prices skyrocketing, briefly outpricing silver by weight. For farming families who had a healthy crop ready at exactly the right moment, it was a sudden, dramatic windfall, years of modest income compressed into one extraordinary season. It's a reminder that sometimes the wealth isn't just in the plant, it's in the timing. Number 9. The Kardupul flower. This flower has never technically been sold. Not because nobody wants it, because nobody can hold on to one long enough to sell it. The Kardupul blooms exactly once, at night, and is completely wilted by sunrise, often within just a few hours of opening. In parts of Sri Lanka, it's considered sacred, a fleeting, almost spiritual event when one finally blooms. Because you genuinely cannot buy this flower once it's cut, some cultivators found a clever way to profit from it entirely. Botanical gardens and private growers began hosting ticketed nighttime viewing events, essentially selling admission to witness the bloom live, sometimes with hundreds of guests gathering for a single flower's few hours of existence. It's proof that value doesn't always come from ownership. Sometimes it comes from experience, and people will absolutely pay for a once-in-a-lifetime moment, even one that lasts less than a night. Number 10. The corpse flower. It smells like rotting meat, it can take a decade to bloom, and when it finally does, people will travel across the country just to smell it. The Titan arum, better known as the corpse flower, produces one of the largest flowering structures in the plant kingdom, and releases an odor specifically evolved to mimic decaying flesh, which attracts the carrion beetles that pollinate it in the wild. Naturally, humans find this absolutely irresistible in a completely different way. Botanical gardens have learned that a blooming corpse flower is basically a guaranteed crowd event. When one is about to open, gardens will extend hours, sell time tickets, and watch thousands of visitors line up, sometimes overnight, just to witness and smell the brief bloom before it collapses within a day or two. A single flower, blooming once every several years, has generated serious visitor revenue for the institutions lucky enough to have one mature specimen. Turns out, disgusting sells. Number 11. The black bat flower. There's a flower shaped like a bat, complete with long whisker-like tendrils that can grow over 2 feet, and it's exactly as unsettling as it sounds, which is precisely why collectors love it. Native to tropical parts of Southeast Asia, the black bat flower doesn't appeal to everyone. Its deep black-purple color and strange, almost menacing shape make it more Halloween decoration than garden centerpiece. But that eeriness is the entire appeal for a specific niche of collectors who actively seek out the strange and unsettling side of the plant world. Growers who mastered its notoriously tricky propagation found themselves supplying a small, dedicated, and surprisingly wealthy buyer pool willing to pay a real premium for something their neighbors would probably find creepy. Sometimes the market isn't about beauty, it's about being unforgettable, and this flower absolutely is. Number 12. Juliet Rose cultivars. Somewhere out there is a rose that took 15 years and millions of dollars to create, and it debuted as the most expensive rose in history. The original Juliet Rose was the product of an obsessive, decades-long breeding program aimed at creating the perfect apricot-colored bloom, something breeders had chased for generations without success. When it finally launched, at the Chelsea Flower Show, it made headlines purely for its staggering development cost. That's a corporate story, not a regular person story, but here's where it gets interesting for the rest of us. Once licensed cuttings and verified stock became available to independent growers, a small circle of specialty rose cultivators built genuine side businesses reselling authenticated Juliet rose plants to collectors and high-end garden designers, riding the wave of scarcity and prestige the original breeding program created, without needing millions of dollars themselves to profit from it. Number 13. True wasabi. Almost everything you've eaten labeled wasabi at a sushi restaurant is a lie. Dyed horseradish, green food coloring, and a marketing trick that's fooled most of the world for decades. Real wasabi is a genuinely difficult plant to grow. It needs cool running water, specific shade, and years of patience before it's ready to harvest, conditions that simply don't exist on most farms. Because of that scarcity, the handful of farms, many in Japan and a small but growing number in the Pacific Northwest, that successfully cultivate authentic wasabi supply an extremely limited, extremely high-paying market of top-tier restaurants willing to pay a serious premium for the real thing. Families who've guarded and perfected wasabi farms across generations have turned what looks like a stubborn, fussy little plant into one of the most quietly lucrative niche crops in the culinary world. Next time a restaurant charges extra for real wasabi, now you know exactly why. Number 14. The ayahuasca vine. A plant that grows wild in the Amazon has quietly built an entire tourism industry worth serious money, all centered around a single, intense night in the jungle. Ayahuasca, a vine used for generations in traditional Amazonian spiritual practice, has in recent years become the center of a booming and admittedly controversial wellness tourism trade, drawing visitors from around the world to retreat centers across South America. Growers and facilitators who cultivate the vine and run these retreats have built thriving businesses around it, some charging thousands of dollars per guest for multi-day experiences. It's a complicated story, tangled up in questions of cultural respect, safety, and regulation that go beyond the scope of a gardening video, but from a pure plant economic standpoint, it's one of the more unexpected examples of a single vine reshaping local economies. Number 15. Rare heirloom coffee varietals. Some coffee trees that farmers once considered basically worthless are now the most valuable thing on their entire farm. For decades, certain heirloom coffee varietals were overlooked in favor of higher yield, more disease-resistant commercial types. But as the specialty coffee world exploded, obsessed with rare flavor profiles, unusual origins, and small batch authenticity, some of those old, low-yield heirloom trees suddenly became the most sought-after crop a farmer could grow. Small producers who preserved these old varietals, sometimes simply because they hadn't gotten around to replacing them, found themselves sitting on exactly what specialty roasters were desperate to buy, often at prices many times higher than standard commercial coffee. It's a rare case of doing nothing, just not modernizing, turning into the smartest financial decision a farming family ever made. Number 16. Rare variegated queen of the night cactus. This one blooms exactly like our earlier flower did, once a year, once at night, gone by morning. But this version comes with an unusual twist collectors are willing to pay serious money for. Beyond the famous single night bloom, certain growers began discovering and stabilizing variegated forms of this cactus, plants with unusual, streaky, marbled patterning across their normally uniform green flesh. Just like the Monstera boom we started this video with, that unpredictable, eye-catching variegation sent collector interest, and prices climbing fast. Specialty breeders who successfully developed and reproduced these rare pattern forms have sold single cuttings for genuinely surprising sums, proving that the variegation gold rush was never really just about one plant. It's a pattern that keeps repeating across completely different species, which honestly tells you something about what collectors are really chasing. Number 17. The Coco de Mer palm. This tree produces the single heaviest seed on the entire planet, and legal landowners sell each one for thousands of dollars. Native only to a couple of small islands in the Seychelles, the Coco de Mer palm produces an enormous, unmistakably shaped seed that can weigh over 30 pounds, the largest seed produced by any plant on Earth. Because the tree grows in such a limited, protected area, harvesting and selling the seeds is tightly regulated, and only landowners with legal rights can sell them. For the families who hold those rights, a single palm grove has become a genuine, steady income source, selling individual seeds to collectors, tourists, and museums for thousands of dollars each. It turns out one of the strangest looking seeds in nature is also one of the most valuable, and the families who've held that land for generations are the ones cashing in. Number 18. Rare Hoya cultivars. This next boom happened quietly, almost under the radar, while everyone was still talking about Monstera. Hoya, sometimes called wax plants, developed an intensely dedicated collector following in recent years, particularly for rare variegated or unusually patterned cultivars. Individual cuttings of the most sought-after forms have sold for hundreds to thousands of dollars, and early growers who recognized the trend before it hit the mainstream built entire shipping businesses around it, sending cuttings to collectors worldwide from what often started as a single home greenhouse. It's proof that you don't need the flashiest, most famous plant to build real income. You just need to spot the next obsession before everyone else does. Number 19. Wild ginseng turned licensed farming. We already talked about wild forage ginseng earlier, but here's the quieter, slower version of that same story, and it might be the smartest one on this entire list. Some Appalachian families, instead of relying purely on wild foraging, transitioned toward licensed, sustainable ginseng farming, deliberately planting seed under natural forest canopy and simply waiting, often a decade or more, for it to mature properly. It's slow, patient, unglamorous work, but it turned family land into a legitimate, renewable, long-term source of income, generation after generation, without the legal risk or environmental toll of unregulated wild harvesting. Not every fortune on this list happened overnight. Some of them were built one patient decade at a time. Number 20. Ghost orchid. For years, this plant was considered nearly mythical, so rare and elusive that even dedicated botanists struggled to find one in the wild. The ghost orchid grows without leaves, appearing almost like a pale, floating flower suspended in midair when it finally blooms, hidden deep in Florida swampland and a few pockets of Cuba. Its extreme rarity turned it into a genuine obsession, famously chronicled in books and films about orchid hunters willing to go to remarkable lengths chasing one. What's changed the story recently is a small number of growers who finally cracked reliable legal propagation methods, successfully growing ghost orchids from seed in controlled lab conditions. Those growers built boutique nurseries almost entirely around this single, once nearly unattainable flower, turning decades of mythology into an actual, sustainable business, without a single wild plant disturbed. Number 21. Rare variegated jade plant. And here we are, the final plant on the list, and it might be the most important one, because there's a real chance you already own its ordinary cousin. Jade plants are about as common as houseplants get, thick, sturdy, easy to care for, sitting quietly on windowsills in millions of homes without anyone thinking twice about them. But every so often, completely by accident, a jade plant throws out an unusual variegation, unexpected streaks of cream, pink, or yellow running through those normally solid green leaves. When that happens, and a grower actually notices, that ordinary-looking plant can become genuinely valuable almost overnight, with single cuttings of rare, stable variegated jade selling for surprising amounts to collectors hunting for exactly that kind of unexpected mutation. That's really the thread running through this entire video. From a 15-year, multi-million-dollar rose breeding program all the way down to somebody's grandmother's jade plant on a random windowsill. Value in the plant world so often comes down to noticing what everyone else overlooks. So genuinely, go take a closer look at your own plants tonight. You might be looking right past something. So there you have it, 21 plants that turned ordinary, everyday people into real, genuine wealth, some overnight, some over decades, and a whole lot of them hiding in plain sight the entire time. If you learned something today, or if you're now suspiciously staring at your own houseplants wondering what you might be sitting on, let me know down in the comments. Tell me which one on this list shocked you the most. I genuinely love reading through them. If you're new here, welcome to the Plant Gardener's Guide. Hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty more stories like this one waiting for you. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear about the ginseng under their backyard trees, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep growing, and keep looking closer. You never know what's hiding right under your nose.